Hello peoples of the internet, and welcome to another Stairway mountain time trial. Here we have the Burnside Special, but in this case we have the custom lead sled. Hey, it's got custom in the name. To me that means I can use it. Anyway, it drives quite nicely, better than I remember the other Burnside driving. It may be because it's lower, I believe, which gives the car a lower centre of gravity and makes it handle better. I'm guessing that's it. Yeah. I believe the suspension was lowered as well as the roof, which has been chopped down naturally. It does affect visibility in quite a nasty way though. I once had a crash on one of the ones and I could barely see anything behind the bonnet. If that happened in the original Burnside, I would be able to see. Anyway, about the handling characteristics, it's just an old vehicle. I accelerate and it will oversteer, but if I'm reasonable with the car, the car will be reasonable to me, which is good of it. I got to the end and the wheels were a bit damaged, which surprised me. It handled okay despite having the wheels in a problematic situation, which surprised me. And it had a bit of damage it picked up along the run, but apart from that, that's all that I've really got to say. On to the next vehicle. Next up we have the 200BX Custom, or technically 240BX Custom, since this one has a 2.4 litre engine, but it's a strange contraption. Why would you take a car which made far too much oversteer to begin with and add loads of power? I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. Maybe if you like drifting, then good vehicles, but I couldn't drift it. It's just the rear end wants to overtake front. It feels like it should be front wheel drive, but it's rear wheel drive. And I'm probably sounding like I'm repeating myself from the base model 200BX, because they really do handle very much alike. I mean, they're just far too dangerous to get a properly good time. Don't get me wrong, if this handled well, it could be capable of a really good time, but it doesn't handle well. And it's just so annoying, because it means I constantly end up crashing into things and destroying the vehicle. But having said that, I did get it to the end, and the time was good, but not great. It was still beaten by the base model Sunburst and the base model 90s Pasiva, which is a bit annoying, but that's the cost you have when you try and drive something this uncontrollable. I just had to be very careful and use about 2 of the available however many horsepowers it's got. I'd imagine about 450. Yeah, so when I got it to the end, through just being very careful, there wasn't too much damage. And yeah, I crashed this far more times than I crashed other cars though, it has to be said. On to the next vehicle. Next up we have a Covet Custom, but in the most overused phrase of this video, this is no ordinary Covet Custom. This one has the V6 engine, which is a mod. I'm not sure specifically the specs of it, but if it's the Pasiva's V6, which I believe it is, it should make about 176 horsepower. Anyway, it handles quite nicely. I can feel overall that it has the extra weight of a V6 in the front, but otherwise it handles similar to the Covet race with a bit less stiffness. It's a nice car to drive really, as all the Covets are nice cars to drive. In this case, being the Custom, we get some nice necessities such as a carbon bonnet, as you will see up ahead. Nice. Anyway, It's not got the best suspension system, but it's good enough. Everything in this vehicle works quite well. Until you try and take it to the really high speeds, then it struggles, but a lot of front wheel drives do, so it's not really something I can hold against this car in specific. Yeah, there's not much more I can say about it really. I had a bit of a crash further down the hill, which was unusually perfectly survivable if you're the driver of a car, and I just kept driving from that as if nothing had happened, which was interesting. Anyway, when I got to the end, not too much had gone wrong with it. It's just an overall nice car to drive, as long as you don't do absolutely stupid speeds along some of the straights. It won't punish you. On to the next vehicle. Here we have the Grand Marshal Custom. It's a very powerful muscle car. I originally thought, since it struggled a bit to put the power down, it had 230 horsepower. Upon later inspection I found it has 475, meaning it's a very powerful car, which allows it to become the fastest car on my leaderboard. Yay! Fireworks and crackers and all that. Anyway, it's quite nice over the bumps. It took quite a lot to kill this just by going over bumps and jumps. It would cope with them very nicely. It also put the power down reasonably nicely, considering it has a lot of power going to just the rear wheels. It does oversteer a bit, but unlike the 200BX, it's not just crazy oversteer. It oversteers because it struggles to put the power down. But then, to a certain extent, it is better than having loads of understeer as far as the time is concerned. Upon getting it to the end, I had knocked my bumper off at some point along the one, and the front right suspension looked a bit broken, but that could have just been by jumping off the jump at the end. Overall, a good car to drive and one I would definitely recommend. On to the next vehicle. Next up, we have the Vishu GTZ Custom. This is the 1980s Pasiva. It's based on the GTZ, only with a bit lower suspension and wider tyres, I believe. It also has transverse all-wheel drive, which is a type of four-wheel drive. Basically, it's front-wheel drive with a drive shaft to the rear, compared to the Roma, which has the transfer case and things like that if you have the four-wheel drive version. The transverse all-wheel drive that this uses is generally less stable. You try and get this up to speed and it really does show that it wasn't really meant to handle 400 horsepower. Yeah, the suspension copes reasonably well with the bumps as well, but it's not the best vehicle in the world. Also, the lack of ABS is pretty annoying, although the alternative would probably be standard Pasiva brakes, which wouldn't be particularly powerful. And yeah, it's quick though, despite all of this. It goes out of corners fast, and yeah, it's a very nice vehicle to get quick times with. On a flatter circuit it would probably be really good, but the bumps on a track like this, or road if you will, can drive it mad. And yeah, I got it to the end. It was a bit damaged, but other than some frontal damage, it lasted quite nicely, which is surprising given its tendency to go mad at times. On to the next vehicle. Next up, we have the 90s Pasiva Custom. I believe this is based on the sports V6 model, and I'm guessing the V6 makes 176 horsepower, although there's no information on the wiki, which is where I go for my information, so that's annoying. Now, this just handles as you would expect a powerful front-wheel drive saloon car to drive. There's a bit of wheel spin, and it drives quite nicely overall. The problem comes though when the brakes just feel pointless. You need to step on them so hard to get anything out of them. I'm guessing they're the same brakes you would find in the base model Pasiva, and although they were suitable for a slow-ish 1.8 litre vehicle, they're just not good enough for a high-power V6 model. It's really holding back the entire car. Without ABS I might get some more performance out of them, but they just feel like they have nothing to give. And it's such a shame in a vehicle which, other than the two problems it has, is a very nice handling vehicle. The first of the problems is the brakes that I've mentioned, but the second of the problems on this car is one you may not think of. It likes setting on fire. It's a very interesting thing. The base model never did it, but this model does it. It likes setting on fire. I actually finished on fire after I crashed into a sign. But it's not just when you crash into a sign with this. Pretty much if you crash in any which way, it will set on fire. It's almost guaranteed. It's strange. And as you'll see, it's just a flaming mess as I get to the finish line, and I believe the car is killed by the fire shortly after I finish, but thankfully I made it to the finish and I got a decent time. I hit a sign on the way, but I'm not going to redo the lap since the brakes just make it a really difficult car to get to the end. You brake and you think everything's fine, and then you fly off the track. So, other than that, it's a decent vehicle, and I guess it's the end of the video now. Goodbye.